8:30, so we'll call the August 17th, 2023 meeting of the Economic Development Authority to order. I believe we have one addition to the agenda that you'd like to put on, Jessica?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have the City of Becker has been invited to apply for a Department of Energy grant and is requesting for the Sherburne County EDA letter of commitment and support as part of that process. So I'd like to add that as item number 4.
Okay. With that amendment, I would be looking for approval of today's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'd also be seeking a motion to approve the July 20th EDA meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? All right, number 4.
All right, so I received a letter from Greg LaRude, Becker City Administrator, and they have been invited to apply for a Department of Energy grant, and they are looking for a commitment letter from the county. So the commitment from the county, and I'm just going to read a portion of what that letter says, that we would work with the project partners to develop a strategic energy plan for the participating entities that would provide resources to assist with updates to local comprehensive and zoning plans, align our efforts with the state and federal grant programs and incentives, and help identify workforce development needs to address an expected shift towards new clean energy development. So they're receiving a grant to develop a Becker Regional Energy Plan, and they're asking us to be part of that process. As part of their grant, they have also asked for reimbursement for staff time, so there's no financial commitment from Sherburne County, and the staff time dedicated to helping them would be reimbursed through the grant.
Who would be the staff people that would pick that up?
Yep.
And I'm confused, is that from the City of Becker, City of Becker?
Becker. Yep.
About how many hours would that take for you to?
I'm not sure about how many hours that would be. I'm assuming that they're going to have regular planning meetings to develop their strategic energy plan.
And when's the grant due?
I know that the letter of support is due by Monday. There wasn't a whole lot of time. Yeah.
Can we actually do a letter of support without the approval of the board?
Well, it'd be signed by the EDA, not the board.
But can we commit staff time without the approval of the board?
Helping Becker is one of our strategic priorities that's been approved by the board, so I think it fits right into that pillar.
Are you comfortable with it?
I'm comfortable with it, yeah.
Okay.
Can I just ask one inquiry? So in the description that I just heard, they said, to update comprehensive plans. Obviously, that's kind of on the 20 seconds agenda. We have a portion in there for, renewable energy but challenge is it'll probably get adopted, but then we have another section in our comprehensive plan that talks about aligning with other, units of government. So there is kind of that zoning would have to get pulled into this, because if we're going to update the comprehensive plan to try and align with their proposal. Yeah. Yep. I wanted to insert that zoning should.
So you're saying that you should kind of be working together as well?
I would ask that, yeah. And I know I'm jumping into something there, additional work, but I heard the reference to the comprehensive plan. We are going to adopt our plan hopefully in October.
Mm-hmm.
So we might have to.
I think that's a great idea.
Your time would be reimbursable as well, then, I'm assuming.
I would assume, yeah.
Maybe. Depends on if his time is directly attributed to supporting that, or simply modifying the comprehensive plan to support it. So there would be a question there, I think. But regardless, I don't think it's going to. My guess is it's not going to be a tremendous effort to modify the comprehensive plan to support something along these lines, because I'm assuming somewhere in the comprehensive plan draft that you've put, which I have not read yet, has something about the energy transition anyway. We have 2 portions to kind of discuss.
Any other questions for Jessica? If not, I'd entertain a motion to, do we draft or just accept the letter?
Approve the letter of support.
Support
And authorize
And
Jessica to
commitment.
sign.
Yep, and commitment to participation.
for the city of Becker.
So moved.
Second?
For a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to our regular business. Jessica?
I can kick this one off. When we went through the budget presentation a couple months ago, Greater MSP was one of the organizations that we have a partnership with, and we have a lot of new committee members that don't know a lot about Greater MSP, so the suggestion was made to offer them to come up and present to us, so that's what we're gonna do today. We have Amanda Taylor and Morgan Hill, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, thanks. Dan, how much time, just so I?
20 minutes, 20 to
20?
25, yeah.
Great.
Ken runs a tight ship, so
Where would you like me to stand?
wherever you're comfortable.
I'll just kind of hover back here.
Becker's meeting.
Well, thanks for inviting us. I don't know where to stand so y'all can see me, but I'll just kind of come, I'll just hang it up here. Really happy to be here and tell y'all a little bit more about Greater MSP and how we as a regional partnership work with Sherburne County and work with cities within Sherburne County. And then we'll give some specific examples of what that looks like and what's really on the horizon for the regional economic development strategy and the priorities of Greater MSP. So. Okay. So I'll go a little bit over what is Greater MSP and how we work as a working partnership. And then a little bit about my team, which is the Business Investment Platform. So I'm Vice President of Business Investment at Greater MSP. We are dedicated to supporting business attraction, expansion, and retention across the region and help communities and partners like Deed and Excel Energy and Great River Energy, other utility providers, to work together as a region to support business growth. And then would be happy to take any questions that you have. So a little bit about Greater MSP. We are a regional economic development partnership. There are organizations like ours in most major metros across the country. And they think of our geography, or we use the metropolitan statistical area as our geography. So that's the 15-county metropolitan area, not the 7-county territory that is often considered the Twin Cities metro by many state organizations. We absolutely include Sherburne County when we think about, and we are promoting the region. It is the economic area, which is the 15-county area, and that does include 2 Wisconsin counties. Don't spend a lot of time supporting Wisconsin, but if they ask for help, we're always eager to assist if it makes sense. And so that's that geography here within the state of Minnesota, and this is how we talk about the region when we're out talking to companies across the world. We do that. We travel to trade conferences and events across the country, and we travel internationally to promote this region. That is part of you being a partner to Greater MSP, is that we are out there doing that promotion, that promotion of the region and the state in partnership with the state of Minnesota. But we have a team who can do that, who are traveling. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about some of those trips coming up and what we've done this year. This is how we describe Greater MSP actually to our board. You'd think that our board, if any group of folks, would know what Greater MSP does. And we get that it's complicated to explain an organization like Greater MSP. And there's so many different kinds of things happening across the partnership and across our different platforms of work that sometimes can be hard to know kind of holistically the objectives of the organization. And so this is kind of a statement that's come out that describes us. And really the point is that we are you, and we work together with you. All the work that we do at Greater MSP is through partnership with different organizations. So while we have a staff of about 24 people, 25, all of our work is executed through projects that we do with partners. So for our business investment platform, and I'm going to show you the other platforms of work at Greater MSP, our partnership, our project partners are cities, counties, the state of Minnesota, our utility providers, and of course employers. But it is the team of folks who work together to promote this place. And so that is absolutely, you embody that for Sherburne County, and you are part of our partnership. And the way that we execute on projects, for us projects being companies who are looking to grow or locate in the region, we do that together. sort of three ways to also describe different kinds of work at Greater MSP. First is our vision for the region, and this came through strategic planning with our board and with our partners back in 2019. And it was the vision that this region, the 15-county Greater MSP region, will lead the world in inclusive economic growth by welcoming all, empowering talent, and igniting innovation. This vision speaks to the point that we want everyone in this economy to have access to good jobs, and that we want to support companies who are doing things here that provide quality jobs and that create higher level of economic output and innovation that will lead to a more resilient, diverse economy. In the middle you have, it's kind of hard to read, but 9 different strategic priorities. These are the priorities that make up the regional economic development strategy. This is something that we worked on as Greater MSP, and we refreshed the strategy back in 2019. I know that Sherburne is part of and has done its own comprehensive economic development strategy work, and I believe you're considering economic development district status, is that right? Trying, okay. So that's where we actually are a little bit separate, where we are not an economic development district either, but we worked on economic development strategy to meet the requirements of EDA's comprehensive economic development strategy. But it would be an equivalent plan. So this economic development strategy you're absolutely a part of, but we know that you're doing some of your own strategic planning. Those can really work together, and that's fine. There's no reason why they can't be aligned, but distinct. On the right, this wheel, this represents the 9 different platforms of work at Greater MSP. Also kind of hard to read, but you'll have the slides so you can take a look at it later. These are the 9 platforms of work that make up the execution of projects at Greater MSP. That business investment platform that I lead and my team member Morgan Hill and one other team member, Callie Judd, make up is this business investment space here. So that's the space dedicated to business growth. But we have a whole lot of other platforms of work that are ongoing and intersect with what we do. I'll call out the importance of this research and intelligence platform, and I can talk a little bit about how we've supported Sherburne County in the past with research support. But that's also a really great segment of the work that we do is providing that kind of economic market data to our partners and to use that data to inform decision making for how we're going to grow the economy. There's a whole lot of other things here. We have a platform dedicated to talent, attraction, and retention. There's a startups and innovation platform called Forge North, and they're really designed to bring together all the entrepreneurial support organizations in the region and make sure that ecosystem is thriving. We have a platform dedicated to communications and marketing and telling that story within the region and globally. We have a platform dedicated to the food and agriculture sector, and that's really, it's a really interesting group because it's led by our largest food and agriculture companies. It is a coalition led by the CEO of General Mills, Jeff Harmening, the senior leadership at Cargill, the University of Minnesota, all the folks who are working to really transform food and agriculture globally. And they're working together here in Minnesota and here in MSP to innovate together. And so it's really exciting to see where that food and ag sector is going and how this place has leadership in food and ag. We are an investor organization. So Sherburne County is an investor in Greater MSP. We so much appreciate and value that partnership and that investment. These are our investors. You can see it's about 80% private sector investment, 20% public sector. You see a lot of cities and counties down here, as well as a lot of private sector investors. And I am realizing now there are a few that aren't actually investors who are on here that are our education partners and foundation philanthropy partners. But our investor base is strong, and it depends on partnership and with cities and counties, just as it is with our private sector partners. This is the way we round up our results. This is a 2022 results view, and just some additional context for how we track our progress and our productivity. You see a lot of words. There's a lot of exciting kind of new projects that were executed last year. You see there's a new venture fund that Greater MSP supported development with partners in the region to invest in minority-owned companies. You see an intern event that we held, so getting all of the summer interns together from across the companies in the region to learn about Minnesota and MSP and hopefully get them to stay in the region after their internships are done. I want to call out these two at the top left. These are the two most important outcomes for our work in supporting business growth. We track the number of jobs that companies commit to, the companies that are supported by Greater MSP through our deal process, and then the capital investment that they're making in new business location or expansion. So last year, through support of Greater MSP and our partners, we saw almost 1,500 new direct jobs committed at business locations and almost $200 million in capital investment. Now, this is a snapshot of 1 year, and Morgan and I, we always like to make sure folks understand that these projects don't always happen just within a year. In fact, we have some projects in Sherburne County that have been taking years to develop. And so projects that we're working on right now, we may not see announcements until next year or perhaps even the year after. So we usually look at like a 3-year window for jobs and capital investment commitments. And right now we have billions of dollars of capital investment that could be announced in the next few months. It just depends on how companies can be ready to make these decisions and how it falls in the calendar year. So, but last year, good year for jobs. A little bit low on our capital investment. We like to hit about a $350 million capital investment target on an annual basis. But I'm telling you, there's some massively huge capital investment projects, particularly data centers, which is something that we could talk about in Sherburne County. We know this is the Becker site is of great interest by many data centers. Speaking of Becker, my crude Google map snapshot here of the Becker land that we talk about a lot. The site, the Sherco site, the Excel property, and the land around, including the Becker Industrial Park, is of great interest to companies that we're talking to. And we work very closely, with Excel Energy on the development of this land. This is something that could be quite transformative over the next couple of years in how this land is developed. And so this is the kind of thing that Greater MSP will, we consult with Excel, they consult with us, and how we're thinking about promoting the land, promoting sites here. And then, of course, we talked to the city of Becker about working directly with companies and what companies need from an infrastructure standpoint. And with you, there's going to be a lot of new traffic if some of these bigger projects land at the Becker site, and they're going to need safe access onto the site. And that's typically the kind of thing Greater MSP as project managers working with companies will hear from. So the companies will talk to us who are considering the region, looking for sites, and they'll say, there's this land, it could accommodate our needs. We're working with the city and county. Greater MSP, can you help us figure out how to work with the city, work with the county in order to reduce risks at the site? So this is an example where it's possible that we could call Dan or Jessica or call the city and say, hey, we're working with this company. They're really concerned about access to the site. Can we help facilitate a conversation about that? We're doing that right now in some other counties, and it's been really a positive experience. I don't have any immediate asks of you about Becker, but we're certainly tracking the activity here. We know that this is going to be some big announcements, right, in the next year or two, just based on the kind of activity that is active in and around the site. Research and intelligence. So we have really a kind of research function at Greater MSP that is responsive to requests. So one of the things that we've done with Sherburne, and you probably have seen these before, is we do a workforce kind of report snapshot pretty much annually. And Dan, reaches out and requests those, and we can give you some insights into what we're seeing in the labor market. That's been obviously really different in the last couple of years after COVID, and so tracking the economy and tracking the labor force and the labor force shortages has been something that we do really closely. So that's the kind of thing we can help Sherburne with, is some of these customized research requests. Federal economic development efforts. So you just mentioned some DOE funding that the city of Becker is looking at. There is a lot of federal funding out there right now. We are very active in trying to bring as much of that money back to Minnesota and the greater MSP region as we possibly can. So we, as a regional entity, have submitted proposals for some big ones. So the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, that was a US EDA program a couple years ago. We didn't end up getting that money, but we spent a lot of time on it. And then just yesterday, 2 days ago, we submitted a application to US EDA for their Tech Hubs program. So this is a new funding program through EDA authorized by the CHIPS and Science Act, which is going to designate 20 tech hubs across the country that will be dedicated to a specific technology area that is important to national and economic security. So we partnered with the University of Minnesota, Minnesota State, Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, the state of Minnesota, and several others, including Medtronic and some of the big health systems in the region, to propose to EDA that we should be the U.S. tech hub for medical technology. So that was a really big undertaking, and we'll find out hopefully this fall if we get that designation, and then we'll move into an implementation process where we'll request funding for actually implementing projects. But it's a whole new world with these federal dollars. There's a lot of money in DC, and we need to get it in Minnesota. And historically, we haven't done a very good job in Minnesota of bringing federal money back, and now we've been pretty engaged in that. The last thing I want to mention is site readiness and site development. And I'll actually go to the next slide too. I'll come back to that. Mention how we work with counties, in particular with site strategy. So we need sites in this region. Sherburne County is blessed with quite a lot of land in the Becker area in particular, but that will be taken down before we know it. That will be used up. And so the kinds of activity that we're seeing at Greater MSP, the interest in this place in Minnesota and the Greater MSP region, is big industrial sites. We have a lot of RFP activity, companies requesting large industrial sites with utilities and access to locate new manufacturing. And it's a lot of new kinds of technologies. Of course, data centers is really active right now in Minnesota, across the country. But we're seeing a lot of bigger advanced manufacturing, biopharmaceuticals, medical device, clean energy, a lot of really interesting kind of new elements of clean energy, not just energy production, but equipment production for clean energy. So one example would be electrolyzers to produce hydrogen energy. So we need big sites, and we don't have many of them that are ready in the region. So one of the things that we've been doing as the business investment team at Greater MSP is going out and really just meeting with you all and touring and getting to know your sites better in the communities within the county. So this is a picture from a tour we did in Scott County back in May, and it was just a day we spent driving around and looking at property and talking to cities and hearing what are the opportunities, maybe what are the barriers. And then actually just yesterday, we met back with the county and city partners to talk about our observations. So a couple of the things that came out of that was, yeah, there's a lot of land, but most of it is in township, not in city boundaries. And to get utilities to these sites, we need to be thinking more comprehensively about orderly annexation. So like, how do we do that? What are the challenges with that? So that was the kind of conversation we were having with Scott County. But we're always open to doing that, and it's I think an opportunity in Sherburne County. So we'll work with Dan to figure that out. I'll just say, let me just go back to our BI activity, and then I'd love to take any questions. So this year, we've had a lot of active projects, 53 active projects right now. That's a lot. That's a lot. So an active project for us is a company that's going through some kind of decision-making about where to invest to build a new facility. And we've had 28, probably now over 30 new projects that have come in just this year. So it's very, very busy. We intake those projects. Usually what happens is if the company has some specifications for their project, we need so much acreage or so much square feet, We need to be in an area that has a really high power capacity, things like that. We'll then put out those requests to our city and county partners to say, hey, this is what this project is. If you have a site or a building that meets this requirement, let us know. And then we go through the process of helping them. So sometimes that means a site visit, and we'll come out and tour. Other times we're just presenting to them, we're sharing data with them. Oftentimes it includes state incentives, or they're asking for help with that. So that's the kind of the nature of a project. And we've got a lot going on right now, and we have a lot of international companies right now that are looking in the region, and we've hosted international companies looking in the region. One last thing is we travel. I mentioned that at the top. This year we attended the Bio International Conference in Boston. And this was a big thing because it's the first time Minnesota has been at Bio for, I think it's 10 years since we've been there last. It's a very, very, very big show, but it's all the bio players, and that's biomedical companies, but also biofuels, and ag bio, a lot of different kinds of activities. And we were there as a group with the state of Minnesota, Xcel Energy, at the University of Minnesota, many, many partners to sell Minnesota for this industry. And we got some really good leads. This is a picture of Morgan I and Judy Ring with Xcel Energy. So it was a really great event, and that's the kind of way we're getting out there, promoting the region, and hopefully bringing some opportunities back. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions about how we work together or continue to work together.
I just have a question. So I'm Andrew Hulse, I'm a new commissioner, so I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a breakdown of sort of historic, those two key success metrics, jobs and capital investment by county. And obviously not just a snapshot of one particular year because, things change. These are not one-year programs, as you say, and 2020 and 2021 are probably not good representation. But, over a period of years, I'd really like to see kind of what those outcomes were by county. And then the other thing would be interesting to me is sort of what the current snapshot of the pipeline by county looks like. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, we can definitely we have some of that historical overall and then by county. The look ahead, I would say, this is a little bit of forecasting, so this is just me looking ahead over the next year. If some of these Becker projects land, Sherburne County will see more capital investment than any county in the metro over their entire history of greater MSP. That's how big these projects are in Sherburne, in Becker. So I'll show you what we have, and then I'll show you it again in a year. Okay. And then it's really unprecedented, the kind of investment that is looking in Becker right now. And just, it's a huge deal for the whole region and the state.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm intrigued by the, Rand Danielowski, Sherburne County Commissioner. I'm intrigued because we've been involved with Greater MSP for a good number of years now. And you are right when you say Sherburne County has a lot of available land for development. And it's the Becker area, it's the Big Lake area, it's the Elk River area. And I'd like to see a more larger view and effort going into those things. So I like the idea of doing those regional tours.
Yeah.
So you can see, because there's a lot of large plats of land for sale. There was a study done a handful of years back, a rail study, because we do have the busiest rail line between Chicago and Seattle. And I don't think that it's used enough in regards to, in that study, if I recall correctly, Dan showed that the Big Lake area was very prime for those possibilities. Yeah. And I'd like to see the thought into that, because it is a region and we definitely want to support, the opportunities in Becker, but there's also other areas that would benefit these opportunities as well.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and it's absolutely true. And rail served sites, I was just saying this yesterday too, there's so few rail served ready industrial sites across the country right now. that if we have one, it'll make a short list on any project really looking for that kind of service. So it's, the trick is it can't just be a rail line running through, a site. There has to be some confirmation from the class one that they could, that they could put a spur off that line, that they could provide that service. We know some of these are trains that are passing through, right? And so we need that confirmation that we're gonna be able to, cut that new spur and that that's not gonna impede traffic. I think that's one of the challenges we've run into in this area. But absolutely, if we've got something, it'll be very competitive. We'd love to help kind of figure out how to market and identify those sites.
And I don't know if you've seen that rail study, but in particular, there was an area that you could offload a whole unit train
I haven't seen it,
off
so
that
I'll,
site. So maybe that's something that can be shared with you as well, because
Gene Goddard was involved in
Okay.
that back in the day,
Great.
and I know he's no longer with Greater MSP. but he-
yeah, he went to Connecticut. No, that's wonderful. Love to follow up on that.
The challenge with that, Rayanne, is we've talked to BNSF, and they love the site as well. It's got 9 different owners right now, and it doesn't have city services. So it's a fantastic location, but there is some upfront work that has to be done to make that a viable site.
yeah, but there was work that had to be done in Bedford as well, so you just gotta start
Gotta
putting
start
one
somewhere.
foot in front of the other, and, yeah. And those 9 owners were willing to come to the
They were,
table.
they
at one
were,
point,
yep.
so.
All right, any other questions for Amanda?
I just have one quick question. So to the point of, a lot of land available, it's been done by planning efforts, preservation. And, projects come in, smaller projects that someone can convert their land to and potentially cause adverse impact to larger projects. So when you're looking at, companies looking at trying to identify spots, you talked about, they need close access to utility services. How many acres are, these, it obviously varies, but how much land are they really trying to?
It depends. I mean, we're seeing,
Right.
Morgan had this too, we're seeing right now, specifically, advanced manufacturing type projects, looking for anywhere from 20 to 100 acres. We have some that have come our way that are 100, 200 acres, and a few that have been 500 plus. Those are fewer and far between, but gosh, if we had one in the region, we would have every site selector in the country coming to look at it. We don't have, Becker was our big site, right? Becker was our big regional site. It still is, but there's a lot of interest in it, and so we have to start thinking about what comes next as a region. So I'd say, if we had some 20 to 50 acre options, and then maybe something in the 100 to 200 acre, those would be finding their way into every request, that came our way that we're looking at that size acreage.
I'd like to see a tour organized for the county, so you guys can actually see what is all out here and available, and actually some large sites that are for sale.
Yeah,
That would have some of the infrastructure issues, but those can, if there's gonna be a guarantee of return on that infrastructure investment, then that is going to promote that investment.
yeah, and that's, I think, the most challenging thing for our cities and counties is how can we make those infrastructure investments in advance of the project? Because the project isn't gonna come unless it has certainty that those investments can be made and that infrastructure can reach the site in a timeframe that meets their timeline. It's the hardest thing about all of this,
But
because
like
there
you
is
said,
some.
there's a ton of money floating around.
Well, that's exactly right. Let's get this money, as much of the state and federal dollars as we can, to be investing in due diligence to figure out how to prioritize that investment. Happy to be a partner to you as we think through that, and to Dan. It's been a really great partnership over the years. We're excited about of course, the interest in Becker, and to your point, every community in the county, we have great relationships. Those requests that we put out go to Elk River, go to Big Lake. So we are aware of other opportunities in the county and look forward to continuing to work together.
We'll get that tour set up with you.
Yeah. It's it's nothing crazy, just a day to kind of go check things out, and we don't have huge expectations of bells and whistles, but we do come back with our observations and recommendations too.
I think you'd be surprised the amount of massive land that is even on the market right now, or potentially could be on.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Jessica, so you got the rest of the meeting. Tell me when we, motion to adjourn.
All right, so the Sherburne County Commissioners have asked Economic Development, HHS, and Planning and Zoning, thank you, to put together a housing workshop. And the purpose of the housing workshop was to really just identify where Sherburne County is at in terms of housing, how we currently participate in housing, and maybe some areas of opportunity. So we will be presenting this, well, this is a portion of that workshop. The full workshop will be presented to the county commissioners next Tuesday on the 22nd. But you're gonna get the EDA and part of the planning and zoning version of that today, just so you're aware of what we're coming to the commissioners with. In addition to that, before I started with that, I just wanted to go back to the strategic plan real briefly, because I promised this wasn't gonna be a document that we made and stuck on a shelf and never looked at again. So in terms of housing, which was an area of focus of ours, we set some goals. And as part of those goals was to attract housing developers to increase the housing options in the county. A strategy to do that, we talked about updating the housing study, talk to developers to learn what their barriers to development are, and to look at what other counties are doing to attract development and what we could do better or what we do well. To build a relationship, this is another strategy, with Health and Human Services and learn their work in the housing sector. And then to possibly explore housing land trust or housing, a local housing trust fund. And so just to have that at the forefront, that was in our strategic plan. And then I will get going with the housing workshop. So the beginning of the housing workshop, I just kind of pulled some data, population projections over the next 20 years, just to kind of tee up what we're gonna look like or projected to look like in the future. So we are forecasting about a 16% overall population growth. About half of the population growth will, in the next 20 years, is projected to be from people over the age of 65. About 20% from people younger than 25, and then a third of new residents will be between 25 and 64 years of age and older. This is just some household income statistics. This is particular to Sherburne County. So in Sherburne County, about 58% of our households have an income of greater than $75,000 per household. The average cost of living for a family in Sherburne County, and this is for 2 adults, one working full-time, one working part-time, and a child, is $66,127 a year. It's the average cost of living. So about a third of our Sherburne County households have an household income less than the cost of living. This is taken right out of the Sherburne County housing study that was completed in 2020. So in that study, the demand calculations indicated that between 2020 and 2030, there would be a need for about 2,800 for-sale housing units, 1,500 general occupancy rental units, and about 1,200 total senior units to satisfy the housing demand for current and future residents until 2030. This just kind of breaks out the demand type by submarket. So I won't go over in detail, but just for instance, like the Big Lake submarket, they're projecting that there's going to be a demand for 822 for-sale units, 224 additional general occupancy rental, and then 312 additional senior units. And that's just in the Big Lake submarket. So that's to keep up with the demand through 2030. So some trouble spots. There is not enough vacant developed lots to meet the future long-term demand of 2,150 single-family housing units through 2030. Given the aging population and high growth rate of our 55 plus, Sherburne County really needs to diversify the housing stock. with the demand of 636 new multifamily housing units for sale through 2030, we really need to look at development of twin homes, detached homes, cottages, villas, those types of housing for our senior population. And that too would also provide an opportunity for that, they move out of their home, that frees up their home for another younger family coming in. And then we have aging general occupancy rental housing is another trouble spot. So we have a demand for 900 market units. I don't need to read them all, but there is a significant demand, most notably in senior housing units in 1,600.
This is from 2020, right?
This is from 2020.
And if you notice, since that time, every city has had an apartment built.
And I'll,
The exception Clear Lake, every other city in the community has had an apartment built. So we've seen progress since 2020 on some of this already.
yeah.
But I don't think enough on the senior aspect.
Correct.
No, I do cover some of the progress, but it doesn't, I cover it right here, new housing unit development, but this doesn't have the mix. So within these numbers, I haven't identified if it's general occupancy rental, if it's low-income housing, if it's senior housing. But in terms of overall housing unit development and demand, the housing study identified that we needed nearly 6,000 housing units through that 10-year projection period. When I made this slide, which was probably May or June, there was 1,914 housing units that had been developed. And 30% of the way through that 10-year projection period, we've had 31.9% of the projected housing units have been developed. So that's just units, like I said, whether that's senior housing, which category that falls into. So overall, the development across the county has been good so far, I would say.
Do your numbers include the recently announced 327 units?
If it's
housing
recently
development
announced,
in Elk River?
if it's recently announced, I'm gonna say probably
So that's
not.
not there, okay. Thank you.
That was it for the housing portion. Oh, wait, no, it's not. Okay, how does economic development participate in housing? So the county does participate in the Minnesota City Participation Program. So this is actually, Minnesota Housing receives dollars from the state to the tune of about 73 million. And then they allocate a portion of those dollars to their housing programs. And then local government units, EDAs, port authorities, we're able to participate in that program. And as part of that program, we receive an allocation of funds dedicated towards housing in our area based off the population. So not in a way that they write us a check, they just designate a certain dollar amount for our region. So in '22, we received a $1.488 million allocation, and then in '23, we received a $1.652 million allotment. And in order to continue to be eligible, you have to continually use at least 50% of your allotment in order to even be eligible to participate in the program next year. So as part of us participating in this program, lenders in our area are able to offer first-time home buyer loans, startup loans, purchasing loans. Then there's also step-up loans where people can refinance, and then fix-up loans where they can use these types of loans for adding on or making improvements to their existing house. Sherburne County has one of the highest participation rates in this program in the state. So in 2022, we had used, remember I said they have to use up to 50% in order to remain eligible. We used 673% of our dollars. So if you use over your dollar amount, they just continue to reallocate the funds from other regions that haven't used all their dollars. So we've had over $10 million in MCPP programs, or loans made in those programs. In order for it to be considered an MCPP loan, they have to be, hold on, I wrote this down in my notes, so I want to give you accurate information. So those are loans with applicants at 80% or less of the area median income. And then the other startup and step-up loans that are listed, those are loans that are through the program, but those applicants are between 80 and 100% of the area median income. And just to give you, we just got our update for the end of July on where our usage is at for 2023. We are already at 351% of our usage for the year at the end of July. So we have fantastic participation in this. Ideas for future discussion. So this is, I'd be opening this up for discussion. How would or could the county incentivize housing? At what level does the Board of Commissioners or EDA in this instance envision economic development being involved in housing? And we did put a framework around that in our strategic plan. What type of housing should the county incentivize? We talked about updating our current housing study. Do we think that should be the whole comprehensive needs analysis, or would just a housing demand update refresh to that study be sufficient? What are other counties doing to address housing needs? And then I have been looking at and just have an interest in, and I'm going to cover a local housing trust fund in the next couple slides just to throw that idea and option out there on the table. So is there any discussions, questions, ideas circulating around those questions?
We talked about it at Sherburne County Connect. And I think, I don't know, having a meeting and inviting maybe developers and making them aware of maybe some of these opportunities that could be out there for ways that they could work together with the county or the townships to, maybe pay less in permits or, I don't know, just things that we can do to attract more developers to come to the area by saying, hey, we're easy to work with.
Yeah.
One of the things I was also thinking about as you're going through the statistics, I don't know how those are calculated on as far as the demographics on what age groups are expected to grow, over the next. But I think it'd be worth at least having a discussion with this group around how we could potentially impact that to bring in younger workers. And my anecdotal experience is that we don't have enough starter homes, or whether it's single
Workforce
family.
housing, they call it, which I hate that terminology.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's why I'm going to use it. but starter homes and that sort of thing. Because if you can attract a young workforce, that not only helps here, businesses that are here, but we're also a great location for the Northwest Corridor. Maple Grove, that area as well. And it seems to me like that would be something that we should at least explore to see if there's a way to influence that, to attract singles and very young families, that sort of thing, to help increase the available workforce in the area.
I know that I've talked a lot too about part of the barrier that I see is the cost of infrastructure. And that will halt a project quicker than anything else. And I've often said that the county takes, if it's a business that needs infrastructure, 25% of that tax base on average goes to the county and the city. The school doesn't normally, we don't want to burden them with that. We're trying to enhance their process, and then the state takes the other quarter. And then the houses is a third. So I'd like to see us help more with the cost of infrastructure, because that is the cost of infrastructure nowadays, in sewer and water especially, roads, it's huge. It's a barrier. Once you pay for the land, which is already up here, I think that's where we're gonna get more in attraction and builders coming, if we can help participate in that thought process.
Well, and I think part of that, though, and I'd like to get some input from builders, right now, I think our zoning plan has a minimum 2-acre lots, right? 2.5 acre lots.
Townships, unincorporated areas.
Yeah, so, my question is do we need to look at specific economic development areas where it allows for smaller lot sizes so that the builder can build more units on a given plot? And does that help them economically or does it not?
But there you're talking township properties more so than cities.
Well,
so-
I agree. I mean, I agree. I just think it's something that we need to put everything on the table, and some ideas aren't gonna pan out, but.
But when you're talking like more of your workforce, you're gonna see it more in your cities, but I think you have to balance it in a city as well. It just can't be all workforce.
Sure.
More of your higher ends are definitely gonna go to the 2s, 2.5s or 2s or whatever, but I agree with what you're saying. But it's,
We do have 2 events coming up that will answer some of these questions. Go ahead and talk about yours.
Yeah, so I'm getting ahead of, I had this, a little bit about this in my presentation later, but since this is exactly what we're talking about, I'm gonna bring it up now. So I mentioned last meeting that I'm putting together a housing summit, and I've been working with, well, first of all, at our last County Connect meeting, that Laura was referring to, which she came and it was lots of fun. And I'm not gonna talk about the whole thing right now, because I wanna talk about that later, but, I did poll the group there on who should be at the table, what ideas should we talk about, things like that, from our County Connect group, which is economic community developers. And then I had a meeting with Molly Nadeau from Treadstone, and we put together a mock agenda for our housing summit, so they're partnering with us. I'm just gonna send this around this way so you guys can see it. So our idea for the day is, we're obviously, we'll start with opening remarks, and Treadstone's gonna sponsor lunch for that day. It will be held here at the Government Center. And then we would like to have an economic update. So I've reached out to King Banyan to come give us an economic update. Hopefully, we can gear that towards building and development, kind of tee up the conversation a little bit. And then we'll go into a Sherburne County update, which I plan on going over some of this similar information. And I should have led with this, but our invite list for this meeting is gonna be builders, developers, appraisers, and realtors. Those are our target audience. Those are the folks who we want in the room. So then to provide them with a county update on the current housing status, current housing needs, hopefully at that point in time, we'll have some feedback from the board of commissioners after our housing summit, housing workshop next week, and then of course from our EDA today. And then I've invited Mark to come and provide a comprehensive land use update, so, kind of lay it out there for the developers and builders in the room, where the county's envisioning future developments to be. And then to have a legislative update on housing from Minnesota Housing First, or Minnesota First Housing, can't remember which one it is, but they advocate on behalf of builders and developers at the state level in terms of funding, because costs and fees are so incredibly high. And so to get a legislative update from them, I had attended education a while back, and they were talking about that very thing. And if you can build a house in Minnesota and a house in Wisconsin, and just from whack and sack, development fees, all that, it's gonna cost $30,000 to $50,000 more for the same exact house in the state of Minnesota than it would in Wisconsin. So hopefully to glean some insights from that. And then to end the summit with a panel discussion. And so what our idea was to go into this, when we send out our invitation, poll our invitees on what questions would you like answered, what does the county do well, what could we do better, what are other counties doing, how could we better attract your investment, and get those questions, and then pitch them to our panel experts, which is gonna be builder, developer, realtor, and generate that discussion between our panel and our audience to hopefully really get some good insights and information to bring back to EDA here for discussion on what we can do that is actually going to benefit and support the housing industry. And we're not making assumptions. We've heard it straight from their mouths. So that's my goal with this.
Good, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. I've jumped ahead a little bit, but anything else anyone who wants to put on the table for this slide?
And we will have the comp discussion on Tuesday, along with Jessica's housing study, so these can be brought forward to the whole board.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial to, maybe dedicate this open discussion after the housing summit and after the comp plan, some of that stuff, maybe later into November. Maybe schedule a full meeting on that where we can really get the information and start disseminating it and having a discussion on that. Obviously, we don't have time, you know,
Sounds good.
in a meeting like this, but if we dedicated one to this, we might be able to get something done.
Like the 4 o'clock happy hour networking at Chow. Probably get more information out of there.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna move quickly through the rest of these slides for the sake of time. I wanted to throw some information up here about a housing trust fund. You guys have the slides, you can look at it afterwards, but there are a lot of benefits to having a housing trust fund. They're statutorily formed. You're able to leverage private dollars, provide flexibility, encourage local contributions. There's been a huge increase in uptick in the establishment of local housing trust funds the last few years, particularly by local government units. 13 cities and 7 counties have developed local housing trust funds. They use them for homebuyer assistance, preservation, gap financing, creating deeper affordability and housing stability. Common funding sources. So really the idea behind a local housing trust fund is to ensure that there are regularly committed dollars towards housing in a community and to develop a stream of funding within a county or city or EDA or whoever forms it dedicated specifically towards housing. Planning and zoning, so there's a couple slides on planning and zoning. This is what they are doing through their lens. Obviously, they're updating their comprehensive land use plan that gathers information to determine the housing needs that exist in our townships, and then looking at alternative dwelling units are being discussed as well. This slide, it's kind of a lot going on, but the purpose of showing this long of a span in dates is to show the cyclical pattern that we have in the county with new home permits for townships. So we are on an incline for that.
Looks like a snapshot of my bank account.
That is where I got it. No, I'm just kidding. Identified housing needs from planning and zoning, life cycle housing, allow township resident housing options, and then people in small hamlet areas to allow for smaller homes, or small lots, sorry. Future ideas, they've got their comprehensive land use plan that's pretty well completed and in the final input phases, and then county ordinances that need to reflect county needs, so update those. This is just some situation examples. We kind of talked about them before, but to your point, Ken, those discussion items may be better had after.
One question before I forget. Mark, when are you looking to be done with the comprehensive plan?
Targeting public release on September 8th, and then public hearing on September 20th, I think, and then county board adoption in October. I can't remember the meeting date off the top of my head.
So that's gonna be ahead of our summit and discussion.
But yeah, it will be. And
That's unfortunate.
not necessarily, because part of the comprehensive plan is not trying to be real prescriptive. It's one of the biggest things that have come out of my work on this thing is the need to be flexible and to kind of be open to where the market's driving us a little more than being prescribed. This is how absolutely everything's going to do. And I think the housing summit, I think, is a great opportunity to launch us into the actual nuts and bolts of refining our ordinance to meet the needs. So I think it lines up reasonably well.
Okay, so I'm going to breeze through my economic development update activities. So this is just from the last meeting to today. We've done 5 BR&E visits. We had 6 scheduled. I have 2 more on Friday, so we're doing good with those. The 2 on Friday I'm really looking forward to. One came as a referral from CMDC as a possible candidate for a revolving loan fund. And then Shoot Steel came from a commercial lender. I presented at a BNI group last Wednesday, and she came to me afterwards and really wanted to get me in touch with Evan Moyer, who's the principal at Shoot Steel. So I'll be visiting them also on Friday, and I saw Josh, you're coming too, so yay. This was our Sherburne County Connect meeting. I have the minutes from that meeting, which I'd be happy to share with the group. I felt like this was probably one of our best, most productive Sherburne County Connect meetings. We had a lot of fun. Centra Care was there, talked about how they would like to be involved in the community with anything related to wellness, whether it's in terms of volunteering, helping. They've even donated dollars for certain initiatives and things like that. I talked about the housing summit that we're planning with Trustland Mortgage. And then we just went around the table, and we had the city of Monticello was also there. And so it was fun to hear what they have going on as neighbors, different broadband projects, infrastructure projects, housing projects that are coming. And then for those of you who don't know, they're redecking the bridge on Highway 25 in Monticello next summer. Oh. So, yes, I heard that, like, everybody needs to know this. And then we also talked about planning, and this is also Rayanne and Andrew, kind of what you guys were talking about, planning a one development, 3 cities, 3 tales exercise. So I had attended a class a while ago, and it did this very thing. And I sent it out to these guys, and they're kind of like, oh, Jessica, really? I think, I don't know, but they entertain me sometimes with my crazy ideas. So, but they had one development. It was a very specific development. It was X amount of houses, same land, same whatever. And they gave it to 3 cities, and then they ran it through all their processes, and in the end, what it was gonna cost the developers to develop the exact same project in 3 cities. And so it was just a really interesting exercise, and I was like, hey, we should do that here. And so I actually asked that, it was through the Sensible Land Use Coalition, I asked them for their situation, their whole PowerPoint and everything, and he gave it all to me. So we have our little project ahead of us once we get that far, but it's just a fun thing to see.
The thing that I do see in regards to trying to compare the cities is you've got some cities that have water treatment plants. You've got some cities that have done a massive expansion on their wastewater plant. And then you've also got the market that pays for that. Like if you've got a large tax base, that helps offset that as versus if you've got a large housing base. So I kind of see that as it would be an interesting exercise, but you're not comparing apples to apples, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's just a fun exercise, and really, I don't think that the outcome is to compare and like make them really look at each other, but really it causes you to go through and look at your own processes, you know what I mean, and policies that are in place within your own city. So that to me would be more the objective than really comparing and that sort of a thing. It's more of a fun exercise to do with hopefully a good outcome. Chamber activities and initiative foundation. So this is just kind of a summary of things that I've been up to this last month. One of the funnest things that I did was I attended a grand opening for the Center City's Affordable and Supportive Housing Project. So when I very first started here last year, that was the first groundbreaking that I went to. And so then to be able to go back and like see it built and people living in it, it was kind of cool. It was really cool. So anyhow, permanent supportive housing for 40 people experiencing homelessness. And then just several different things, some highlights on here. Dan and I met with the new president and CEO, Natalia Bauman, for the GSDC. And we had a good conversation about our strategic plan. I shared that with her and different projects and things that we'd be able to partner on in the future. The St. Cloud Small Business Development Center, they used to come to the government center on a regular basis and offer their services. And then just through COVID, that partnership just kind of fizzled away. They're going to be coming back. So they will, again, be back at the government center probably within the next month or 2 on a regular basis. Different grand openings, ribbon cuttings. The Initiative Foundation Brain Trust event, that's a social entrepreneurial program that they have. And I got asked to come back for the second time to be an advisor to their new entrepreneurs, so that's really fun. I actually got assigned an entrepreneur that was in Sherburne County, and so I can then turn around and follow up with her after that. And then tonight, in partnership or collaborative effort with Mille Lacs County. Laney, can't remember what her last name is. Laney's her first name. We are going to be presenting at the Princeton EDA meeting and just sharing how county participates in EDA activities with the Princeton EDA. And then I have a Big Lake Chamber presentation on August 29th. I did hand out just the BRNE update or business activity update. It shows on there are 5 retention visits that we did and then other businesses that we've touched. And then the very last thing that I have is just an update on the business lab. So we've had 152 sessions booked with 72 unique businesses that's created 40 jobs. So that's
Is that to date, Jessica, or is that just recent?
That's to date. Yep.
It's about 2.5 years.
So
It's been a really good program.
that's what I have for my.
All right, great. Any questions for Jessica? Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? All right, let's roll.
I think next month we'll have city reports.